Hey everybody, welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 71 for November 3rd, 2017. Hey everybody, it is Daniel Rubino, joined again by Zach Bowden for another exciting Windows Central Podcast. A lot on our chart this week. We got the Razer phone. Yes, we're going to talk about that. Specifically, why we're covering it, because I know a lot of people had some issues with that, especially our core audience who are probably listening to this podcast, but we'll just briefly talk about that. Then we'll jump right into, of course, the Xbox One X, which reviews came out across the board today. What was probably the biggest push for Xbox reviews I've seen in a long time. And we'll talk about ours and what the consensus seems to be with it. We'll also briefly mention how the Verizon has picked up the HP Elite X3, or more accurately, they approved the phone for sale. We'll also talk about the Surface Pro LTE and when that comes out, what that actually means. And we'll also just talk about general Windows stuff. But first, we have a special guest today with Daniel Da Silva, who runs our sister site, if you've never heard of it, called Thrifter. And we have it's one of those sites that covers a lot of special deals and tech. And if you're interested in a lot of that stuff, especially with Thanksgiving coming up in the holiday seasons for Christmas and all the nice holidays, well, let's do that. So Daniel, welcome to the podcast, and what's going on?
Well, right now there's a lot of craziness going on in my house because apparently my dog is going absolutely crazy. But besides that, we have also hit November, which is a big time for the deal world. So for those who aren't aware, we launched Thrifter back in February, and like you said, it's a Thrifter is a Mobile Nation site as well. And the idea behind Thrifter is we're trying to always help our readers save money through deals and product recommendations. So there's no need that anybody should ever have to spend more, than they should, whether they're buying, a budget type product or a really high end thing. We're always all about trying to save money. And what we're doing here for Black Friday is this is our big push. So we've already seen a couple Black Friday ads come out. One from Dell, which was super notable earlier this week. We shared that with the Windows Central crowd because there were a couple notable PC deals as well as Xbox console deals in there. We've also seen Kohl's Black Friday ad, BJ's, and JCPenney. So along with the actual deal coverage all November, we're going to be running a pretty sweet giveaway. So what it is a 65-inch Samsung 4K TV, Xbox One X. Yes, I said X, not S. So it's the brand new console we're going to be giving away too. And a pretty cool soundbar with it. And to boot, a $50 gift card to B&H on it. So that we've actually put up already this week, the giveaway. So you can head to thrifter.com and sign up for the giveaway now and get your entries in. The other crazy thing that we're going to be doing, which is also another exclusive, is running a doorbuster. So we set out to find a product that is going to be super popular anyways, but we don't think it's really going to go on sale this year. And we partnered with a retailer and a supplier to be able to acquire enough of this product that we're going to be able to sell it to Thrifter readers for an insane price. I'm saying, like, last week we saw it on competing deal websites, this product, for double the price that we're going to be selling it for later this month. And we're not ready to really tell you what that product is yet, but I can tell you this, that it does have a Windows 10 app. And
yes, and I believe we reviewed it recently, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so once we're ready to release all the details on that, I'm sure you'll see it. Definitely check out Thrifter, check our social accounts to keep up to date with it. But the big thing that we've seen from the ads so far, and when I say ads, I mean the circulars that would come to your house. So some of those have already been released or leaked on the internet, but well in advance of Black Friday later this month. And like I said, we have the Dell one and the Kohl's one so far that have the most notable Xbox One deals. So we haven't seen any discounts advertised yet for Xbox One X. That's not too surprising. I wouldn't expect to see any sort of big price drops or discounts for that, obviously, because it's just coming out now. Maybe you'll get like a free small gift card or something along with it. But inventory's already looked pretty tight on it anyways, so I couldn't see any retailers discounting it. Now, the Xbox One S looks like the discounted rate at multiple retailers is going to be this $190 price point. which is pretty good for it. You know, it's a dated system now, especially with the X coming out, but it's still highly desirable, especially at $190. And you probably
Nice.
wouldn't expect it, but Kohl's is matching that same 190 with Dell, and they'll give you $45 in Kohl's cash, which people who shop Kohl's frequently, that can actually be a pretty good savings on top of the $190 price drop. So it's good to keep up with that too. So you may gravitate towards Best Buy and Dell and things like that for all your tech gear, but don't discount Kohl's and other off-center retailers because they can have some good deals on electronics too. We haven't seen much in the way of 4K TVs. I'm sure they're going to be super popular this year, but I can say that if you're in the market for one, you just picked up your new Xbox One X, you want to buy a 4K TV, I would say to look towards maybe Costco or Sam's Club for a name brand high-end type TV. But if you're looking to just get into 4K on a really tight budget, I would probably go with Walmart or Best Buy. They have their in-house brands, and they have some one-off special budget versions of 4K TVs that you can get in for really cheap. So those are your two options of what I would say now. But what we're going to be doing is keeping up to date with all these deals as they drop from all the retailers. And during Black Friday week, the whole team of thrifters getting together in a room. We're going to be war rooming it out, and we're going to be having a live webcam show so you can watch us in our newsroom as we filter all the deals that are coming out, and then sharing them, getting excited, everything like that. And then we'll also be announcing and sharing all the Black Friday ads through the rest of the month as they come out. The big ones obviously still haven't come yet. Best Buy, Walmart, and Target. We'll let you know when those drop. It'll be a little bit, I would say. But I'm going to jump back on the Windows Central podcast when all the Black Friday ads have already been released or leaked. And then we're going to run through the best PC deals, the best Xbox deals, the best general technology, PC accessories, components, everything. So we're going to go through, find it all, and then share with you next time we jump on. This was more of a just, hey, we're out there and we're already doing work on Black Friday, so it's something to be aware of.
Great. Well, it sounds good. I know a lot of people are going to be looking at 4K TVs. We'll be doing actually an article, again, bumping about what's the best one you can get with the Xbox One X. I myself, if you watched our video review of using the LG C7 55-inch, which is not cheap at all, but it's the OLED TV, and it's pretty much one of the best ones you can get out there. I also have a Samsung 65, and I think those are the two top brands because they make all the actual display components. So we'll be doing some stuff on that. I know we have a lot of questions, and later today, the new Ask Dan episode, I talk a little bit more about what you should look for in a 4K TV too for getting for the Xbox One X, because it is very confusing, and we got to do a guide too on this stuff, because when you first plug in an Xbox One X, the way HDMI ports are set up, they're not default going to do your HDR and 4K gaming stuff. And this goes across Samsung and LG too. So very confusing stuff, but we'll be doing a little bit more guides on that because I know a lot of people have questions. But where can we find you on the Twitters and the internets?
On Twitter, you can find Thrifter at Thrifter Daily. And then myself, I'm at iDannyOcean. And like you're saying, the Samsung makes the best, some of the best 4K TVs, and that's actually one of the one that is in our exclusive Black Friday giveaway. It's a 65-inch 4K, so we definitely didn't get bottom of the barrel quality for it. So definitely Excellent. Make sure you get your entries in. There's gonna be one grand prize winner for all that. So
awesome, sounds
make
good.
Sure you get it.
Yep, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks to talk about more PC and Xbox deals.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Bye now.
All right, so that was Dan from Thrifter. We're just going to move on to our next topic straight away. The video podcast is cut out for just a sec as I sort out the camera angles and stuff. Dan's going to carry on whilst I sort the cameras out, so take it away, Dan.
No pressure at all. All right, let's talk about Razer phones. So I know this is a very controversial topic. We're not going to talk a lot about it, but I did post an editorial today talking about why we're covering it, because I realized a lot of our core audience here was, some of them were upset. A lot of people, though, understood why we're doing this, and I was actually shocked. YouTube comments were more friendly than this Windows Central comments, which never ever happened. So Razer invited us to go check out this phone. We've known about it for a while, and we do a lot of work with Razer, right? I have actually 2 of their laptops that just came in this week with updated specs we'll be looking at. They're one of the biggest PC manufacturers for gaming PCs, specifically high-end gaming PCs. And we like working with them. They make cool stuff. So they bought a company called NextBit at the beginning of the year. And that company is actually made up of some ex-HTC people, which was funny because when I did meet up with Razer, I was running into some old HTC people I used to know. And it's a very small world, of course. HTC used to be one of the biggest Windows mobile makers out there, so that's why I know these people. And it was cool. So within 9 months, basically, they came out with their own phone, which borrows a lot of the design language from this NextBit stuff. And so we went to check out the phone, and we covered it. And a lot of people were, I think they were both upset with the fact we covered it / we had a bunch of articles that came out at once, mostly because we had so much coverage of it, and we wanted to do that. So let me just quickly address why we covered it, and then we just talk about the phone briefly. So we covered this stuff because Windows Phone's dead. I mean, we've talked about this endlessly on this podcast before. It's a shame. I would rather be telling you about the latest Lumia device or some new phone from Samsung that runs Windows 10 Mobile. I wish we were there. We're not. And so if you're holding on to your Lumia 950, your Lumia 640, and you're totally happy, listen, that's fine. We're going to continue covering that stuff. We'll continue when there are app updates, OS updates. We'll cover your device. And I'm not going to try to tell you you're wrong. Enjoy your phone. That's fine. But there are a lot of people who are coming up on their contract expirations. They're seeing all this new hardware out there, and they want a new phone. And their question is, what should I get? And if you haven't been following Android or iOS closely, you may have a lot of questions. We're all in the same boat here. Zach, me, Jez, Richard Devine, we all get together often and talk about these new phones because we're not as caught up to it as well. So we're learning as we go along, and we're deciding ourselves what phones we want to look at and are considering. And we have some requirements probably that mesh with a lot of you folks. We don't want a phone that's has a ton of bloatware on it or carrier nonsense. Or, for instance, I bought the LG G6. A lot of you, I'm sure, have heard of this phone. It's a really nice phone. I wouldn't recommend it, though, because LG software really slows down and lags down over time, and it's a really poor experience. The hardware is beautiful. So this is a phone where if you're coming from Windows Phone, I wouldn't be like, that's the first phone you should look at. Instead, we talk about things like OnePlus or even the Pixel or this phone, the Razer, because they're stripped down Android, which means you can do anything you want with them. For us, that means I want to put Microsoft Launcher on there. I want to put Edge on there. I want to put Microsoft software. And that's what we've done. So that's why we're covering this phone in particular. One, we cover Razer already. So if you have a Razer PC, there's a good chance you may be interested in their phone. Two, Microsoft makes a lot of this software now that runs on Android and iOS. Now, Zach and I talked about this. We kind of prefer Android because you can set a Microsoft Launcher as default. You can set Edge as default. You can even set Cortana as default. So you can basically make this feel like as close as you can to a modern Windows phone in 2017. I know it's not ideal, but it's actually not a bad experience. Versus iOS. Now, an iPhone's nice phone, makes great hardware, whatever. I don't particularly like iOS 11. I'm really disappointed in it. But you can't do a lot of this stuff. So if you're coming from the perspective of a Windows Phone user who likes Microsoft products and would like to stay in that ecosystem, but want a new phone that's high-end, that's what we're trying to do. We could ignore this topic altogether, right? We're doing very fine, by the way, as far as covering Windows, Surface, and Xbox. In fact, gaming is one of our biggest categories right now. We're doing very well, and we could just totally ignore this stuff. But the fact is, smartphones are super important today, and it's one of the reasons why we're so disappointed in Microsoft and pulling out of it. But a lot of you have smartphones and want to know how to best use your software with it, how to interact with Microsoft. So we can either just ignore this stuff or we can help guide you. And the fact is, we're all looking for these phones too. And so we're just going to write articles on it about our own experiences, about what we think. If you don't like that, that's fine. I kind of don't care. And I know that sounds really like a jerk thing to say, but the world doesn't revolve around the 1% who are complaining in our comments. And seriously, that is what this comes down to. And I'm not trying to convince Windows Phone users who are happy with their devices to switch. Like I said, stick with it. But this is a decision we made. We're not going to be covering every Android phone that comes out. We're not going to cover most Android phones. But every once in a while, when a new phone comes out that we are interested in and we think you guys may be interested in because it meets certain criteria, yeah, we're going to cover it. Not to mention the Razer phone is being sold by Microsoft through the Microsoft Store and online. So there is that as well, too. If Microsoft endorses it, well, we kind of endorse it as well. Now let's... Oh, Zach, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I want to just point out as well that if you have decided to stick with Windows Phone, that's totally fine. We're still going to be covering Windows Phone for the few that remain on the platform. There will still be articles about new apps for it or new software features if there are any coming, new surprise hardware which I'm sure may or may not show up, such as the Verizon Elite X3, which we'll talk about later in the show. We will keep writing about Windows Phone. We are still Windows Phone fans, even if Microsoft isn't. So, I mean, we still have Windows Phones lying around. I'm sure Dan has at least 4 sitting at his desk or in near, like, actually, arm's length for each. So,
730, 950 XL, Alcatel Idol, literally right in front of me. So,
a Windows Phone is never too far away from either of us. So, we're always covering Windows Phone. Our Windows Phones still remain on. I think Dan even has a SIM in one of his still. So, we're still going to cover Windows Phone. We cover Windows, and Windows Phone is still there for some people. So, that's what we will cover. We're not abandoning Windows Phone like Microsoft
and is. We should definitely point out, if in 2018 Microsoft has a new product that comes to market, like where we've been talking about, this Andromeda thing, and it makes phone calls, and this is a new category, guess what we're going to start to prioritize over Android and iOS devices and recommend for you. I mean, this isn't really rocket science. We go where the things are. So if that device comes out and we're like, hey, I'm not using my Android phone anymore, I'm using this thing, well, that's where we'll go too. So I think people are making, and I get it, these people are super passionate. I don't want to, denigrate them. I think they really enjoy the experience, and I get it. Like, when I pick up even a Windows Phone 8.1 device, I miss that sort of experience a lot. But the majority of the world has sort of moved on from this stuff. And so we need to, follow that and also just use our own expertise, our own experiences, and share that with you guys. Now, to talk about the Razer phone just real quickly, why we like it. For one, it has a 120 hertz display. So if you watched my Ask Dan episode last week, I teased this. Someone asked me, when is Surface going to do 120 hertz display? And I mentioned the problem is its battery life. Even HP does them. The new Spectre has the option for the SureView screen, which runs at 120 hertz. The problem is that you only run at full HD because the battery draw tends to be very high. So this is one of the first phones that has a true 120 hertz display in it. But what's cool is it auto adjusts. So when things aren't moving, the frame rate obviously drops down. It's like G-Sync, NVIDIA G-Sync or AMD FreeSync in that sense. And so it conserves battery. But the idea here is when you're playing video games, you're going to get that super high frame rate. Most phones only do 60 hertz or, what's 60 frames per second kind of thing. This will give you twice that refresh rate. So it looks cool. So for people who game on mobile, this is just a really cool device. Even if you don't, just watching video or just using, even Twitter, when you're browsing the web, if you've never tried a 120 hertz display, you don't go back, or it's really hard to go back because it's the stuff that's in Mac OS, the animations that people really like. It's that high frame rate, and it's still missing a bit in Windows. Now, you can do this at home. You can go buy a 120 hertz or 240 hertz display for your PC and experience this, and it's pretty awesome. But to have on a phone is really cool. They also packed in a 4,000 milliamp battery, 2 giant discrete amplified front-facing speakers that have Dolby Atmos. It doesn't have a headphone jack, which even I'm disappointed in, but they do give you a DAC USB Type-C adapter. If you don't know about DAC, it's for real high-end headphones. It's a separate amplified system that gives you really, really good 24-bit audio. And this is just a cool looking phone. The design language is very reminiscent of the Razer Blade series. In fact, the speaker grill looks a lot like it. And it's just, I don't know. I personally found it to be a fun phone. And it doesn't run doesn't have any bloatware. In fact, that's one reason why they didn't get it on Verizon. Verizon, we talked about this before with CDMA. It's a real pain to get on CDMA. You have to pay Verizon for the testing. Then they start to maybe demand stuff if you want it to be carried in their store, for instance, put on all our Verizon bloatware. And Razer was like, they don't want to do that. So it's only GSM. It's unlocked, though. But I think what's really nice about it, it's a 5.7-inch IGZO display. Also, I should mention, that's the same display Dell uses in their XPS 13 and 15, and those are really nice displays. Snapdragon 835, 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is just ridiculous. It's amazing how powerful these things are. But it goes for $699, which is surprising because Razer usually charges a lot. So,
do we have any benchmarks on the battery life with the 120 hertz display?
I forgot what they said about that. It's basically all day. I mean, it's supposed to.
That's impressive.
Yeah, well, that's because of the G-Sync stuff, because it will slow down when not in use or on static objects. So it's not always running at 120. They're also teaming up with gaming companies to make games that are optimized for it. So the Titanfall Assault is going to be optimized, and a bunch of games that are coming out will be able to leverage that high display. It's like Xbox One X, where you're going to be able to choose between, do you want high frame rate or high graphics kind of thing. And they worked with their thermal team that work on their laptops for this, so it doesn't get hot, but it dissipates the heat enough so that the processor never throttles. Just really cool stuff. I'm just happy for them. They're a cool company. They take a lot of risks, and I don't know, they're just fun to work with because they're still small, and so they're pretty wild.
They're like the cooler version of Apple. Apple's like very posh, high class, and then Razer's like I'm gonna go against the grain and do what I want to do. And it's
I feel like awesome. Razer looks at Apple and just is like, nerds.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And with all their black shirts, and gaming and stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't know. They're just a fun company. They're a fun small company, and I like dealing with that. They're one of the few companies I said I would actually consider working for, just because everybody there looks like they have so much fun.
And on the plus side, they like Windows. All their laptops run Windows.
Yeah. Now, let's get into that. That's a really good discussion. So a lot of people said, like, why is it not running Windows 10 on ARM? And I would say a couple things there. One, Windows 10 on ARM is still coming out, right? It's still a very new category. I don't think we'll see in like phones initially. Like you could see that happen at some point, but I think the initial devices we'll see will be more like traditional smaller laptop type devices, or maybe even larger tablets. There's still the issue where Razer wants to make this a mobile gaming device, and unfortunately, the Android store still has all the big mobile games right now that people are playing, especially in China with Tencent, I believe is the name of the company that makes a lot of these massive multiplayer online games. And, those still are not on Windows 10, at least through the store. You can download a lot of these, obviously, through other means. But that is a weakness. I would also say, I don't think this precludes Razer from making that device that, our audience would kind of want running Windows 10 ARM. I think they're going to be like most companies still in 2018, maybe even now, look at Windows 10 and ARM, what it can do, see what a device they could make that would fit into that, and what it can offer. And if they think they can make that device, there's absolutely no reason why they wouldn't. I mean, what I like about Razer, they do have a good relationship with Microsoft, hence why Microsoft is selling this phone through their store. So I would hope to see something like that, and we'll obviously follow that. And I get why people would want that device. But Windows 10 on ARM, there's a lot of questions there, right? I'm very interested in it. I know our audience is too. I know they demonstrated World of Tanks playing on it and Photoshop, and, that's cool. But until we see these devices, because we have no idea what they look like, until we see them, until we get to benchmark them and see how well they actually can run, I don't want to build up too much expectation, because these aren't going to be like Core i7 processors. These are Snapdragon 835s. How well that runs Windows and then a game on top of that, I don't know the answer to that. Until we see these things in action, I don't want to be like, oh, that's going to be the game killer. And again, I want it to be, but,
Got to remember, a lot of that stuff will be emulated as well. So not only are the emulation adds a whole nother layer of performance issues that may come up. So it really does depend. And as we've said in the past, I can't see any phones coming out with full Windows 10 on ARM anytime soon. That's not going to happen, especially with the stuff going on with Windows Core OS and the C Shell. It's very likely that if a phone is to ever launch with Windows 10 again in the future, it will be with some kind of specific Windows Core OS edition. So, yeah, I mean, it's very exciting stuff. I'm sure Razer will be one of the companies to look into that at some point in the future, if that ever comes to be. The only problem I have with the Razer phone, it's overall very great. And I know why they did it, and I know some people are okay with this. I personally dislike this, but they put the speakers on the front, and it just gives it a big forehead and chin, and I really don't like that. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly optimized this device for an amazing display, which it does. Richard Devine's using it right now, and he says when he looks at an iPhone screen, it makes him want to puke. That's, I think, a literal quote he said. So it's a very good display. They obviously put massive front-facing speakers, and they're so loud. Now, Michael Fisher said this too in his Mr. Mobile review, or hands-on with it. Razer's not saying they're the loudest speakers, but they're probably the loudest speakers you'll get on a phone. They're kind of ridiculous. But because they made those decisions, it's not IP67 or 68 water resistant, all that, because you just can't make speakers that big that are waterproof. And because it's a metal body, just like their Razer laptops, it doesn't have the Qi wireless charging. But we've talked about that before, where I don't find Qi as cool anymore, not because I like the idea of wireless charging, but the standard hasn't caught up to Qualcomm Quick Charge. So, and this has Qualcomm Quick Charge 4.0 Plus, which I didn't even know was a thing. It's the first phone to feature that. So you can recharge a 4,000 milliamp battery in about 30 minutes, which is ridiculous. That's the other thing. With the Qi wireless charging and a 4,000 milliamp battery and the charge rate that Qi can do, you would have to. I get it for people who go to bed at night and they just put it down and it charges. That's fine. But if you're driving in a car and you're actively using it for GPS navigation, the phone will, with the Snapdragon 835 and RAM, will drain faster than Qi can recharge it at. So this is where I don't find Qi as cool as it was when we had it in 2012, which was really at the time, amazing. See,
the best thing about the wireless charging is just that, it's especially at a desk. Right now, my Samsung's on a wireless charger, a Microsoft branded one, by the way, and it's just sitting there chilling out. It's like, it's not at 100%, but it's like in the 80s, 90s range, and it's just slowly going up. I'm not rushing anywhere right now. It's just keeping it topped up. Whereas the quick charge feature plugged in, at bedside, it takes away the stress of remembering to plug your phone in at night. Do you remember 5 years ago where if you'd forget to plug your phone in before you go to bed, you're screwed the next day? Like, oh, my phone's... But
that's why I like that with the quick charge. Like, if I plug the phone in for 15 minutes,
right,
I'm good,
So if you forget at night, you can wake up in the morning, you see your phone's on 10% left. You go, that's totally fine. You plug it in, you get in the shower. By the time you're out the shower, the phone's pretty much ready to go. That's how cool it is.
Yeah, and I think Qi will evolve. I mean, this is the weird thing. I saw Qi 2.0, I think it was 2 years ago at CES. They have this new thing called resonance charging, where it doesn't even need to make contact with the device, the coil, to actually charge. It can charge. They had like a box, and you would put objects into it, and they would just charge. It was called resonance charging. And it was also supposed to be faster. But I don't know where that is. So
someone's asking if Qi has fast wireless charging. Yes, but it's not as fast as the fastest wireless charging. I think Samsung's, maybe Samsung specific, I'm not sure, but Samsung's phones definitely support fast wireless charging. But my current charger here isn't fast compatible. But yes, they do have fast. It's not as fast as the wired version, obviously. But I think it gets up there relatively quickly. It's not super quick, but it's faster than normal wireless charging, which is nice.
Yeah, so anyways, that's our brief rant on the Razer phone stuff. Like I said, I get why people are like this, but just skip over the article. It's fine.
We won't
people
be
were
upset.
like, I mean, we posted over 100 articles in like 2.5 days, and that was just a couple of them. And people were like, this is all the site is now, Sandra. It's like, really? Because we're working pretty hard on our site. We have 14 writers pumping out stuff. So.
I've seen people saying, well, why don't you just let Android Central do these reviews? Well, Android Central, they're Android. They're Google users. They use Android phones primarily with Google services. And not every Microsoft person who's interested in an Android phone is using Google services. If we're reviewing an Android phone, we're reviewing it through the eyes of a Microsoft user. So instead of installing like the Pixel launcher and Gmail and Google's Now and whatever it's called these days, we're installing the Microsoft launcher with Edge and Outlook and Cortana as our default assistant. We're using the phones differently to them. We're going to be reviewing Android phones from the perspective of a Microsoft user, and that's what our readers, well, most of our readers are interested in. If you're not interested in that, skip over the article. We won't mind. Trust us, we don't mind.
Yes. Yeah, that's the other thing. Android Essential doesn't quite do the Microsoft stuff that we do.
Right.
So we always do more in depth in how it, connects to your Windows 10 device. So, all right, let's talk about Xbox One X. This came, very exciting launch. If you haven't ordered yours yet, I think today's the last day you can technically pre-order. It comes out November 7th for $499. We did our review. Jez did the written part, much more in depth than I did. Mine was more of an overview, but I touched upon my experiences with the device. The gist is this: it's an excellent console. You can tell the Surface team, worked on this, because the amount of power this thing has, it's slightly smaller than the One S. Kind of depends on how you're measuring it, but it's actually shorter, and it's so dense. It's just like it kind of actually reminds me of an iPhone, how iPhones just feel heavy, like unnecessarily. Like it's about a half a pound heavier than the One S, but the One S has a lot of hollow space in it, where the fan is, it's just like empty space between the board and the fan, and then and you can feel it, and it creaks a bit. This thing's a brick. You can tell there's no space in this thing. It is packed with just hardware and cooling stuff. And it feels really nice, but it's impressive because it gets hot. But it blasts out the back in 3 ports. And they have this brand new centrifugal fan and all this like cool technology. Some of it, the power regulation stuff, is technology they invented. And it's not loud. You can see I did, and I put it on Twitter, a decibel reading of it. This thing it's at 40 to 45 decibels, which is babbling brook if you look it up, and it's the lowest threshold for ambient noise in an urban environment. It basically means a foot away you're not going to hear it. It's super quiet. And that's it's quieter than laptops that are running at full blast, and that's during 4K gaming. Not just idling. That's really impressive to be able to do that, because you would think, this thing blasting 4K gaming and you're running it for a while, you're going to hear just like whirring fan, right? PC users are certainly used to this when they run like a 1080, but this doesn't do that. So it's a really nice experience. So the hardware, they just did I think a bang up job. Jez and I both agree kind of the downside right now is, one, not a ton of titles. There's a lot of backward stuff that's coming out. Gears of War 4 is kind of the best example of like what this thing can do. It runs at 4K, it can do 60 frames per second, and it really does look amazing. But the problem is, and it's not a problem, but it would have been nice if there was a really cool game that was a AAA exclusive, a reason like that sells the console, that came with the One X, and it's not here. I'm not saying the One X is doomed, or I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it would have been nice to have had this like killer game. I think Microsoft still struggles, especially in 2017, with getting really top-notch AAA titles compared to Sony. That doesn't mean for some of our audience they don't care. I actually personally don't care when I say this stuff. I don't play Sony. I don't look at those games and like, oh, I must have that. I'm actually very happy with the library I have on the One X, but I get where that criticism comes from, and you can't deny it would be nice to have that. Like there's no world where the Xbox One X launching with a AAA exclusive title that's awesome and well reviewed is bad, right? There's no scenario where that's the truth. That's my only complaint. And so we got to wait a little while. Today, Forza Motorsport 7 just got an update, so that's now One X ready. We have seen Recore come online.
I think Halo 5 Guardians is now supported as well.
Halo 5 Guardians. Microsoft's been very aggressive. I mean, I get emails literally from Microsoft PR going, "Hey, this is live. Go download the update." And they've been lighting them up all week. So they're they're really on top of this. And they say 70 titles will be ready by Tuesday when this goes on sale. Some of those are indies. For instance, I play Grid Retro Enhanced. We reviewed it. Paul Acevedo did. It's a really cool racer future game. I like the Grid series. They were actually on Windows Phone for a long time. And that's already 4K HDR. So you're getting indie titles, which I think is more important than the AAA stuff, because if you can't get the indie, like if the indie guys are doing it, there's no reason to think that the big titles won't do it, right? If even like companies who make Grid are doing 4K HDR enhanced, then yeah, you can expect all the big games coming out to do it as well. So I think that's actually a really good sign.
I think what we'll see over the time, not even a long time, is that developers building for Xbox will just support the X anyway, because it's so easy to do so. The game's supposed to dynamically scale if you're building with UWP. And as such, it just requires, it shouldn't take that much effort to make a game that works on the Xbox One X. A lot of developers will target the low end, and so it's just easier to upscale than it is to downscale. So over time, we just should see games support X by default, which will be exciting.
Yeah, and as someone points out, they really appreciate how they could play their older games on the One X. I mean, and that works two ways, right? The fact you can actually play even 360 games now through that backwards compatibility program, as well as your Xbox One game, that's just cool, right? Just this isn't a console shift, so you're not losing anything. But more importantly, games do just look better. They do just scale up and look nicer on the One X. And now, this is the other half of the equation, right? To really appreciate the One X, you need a good TV. If you just have a full HD TV, you will see a benefit. The games will look better. When you play something like Gears of War, you will get 60 frames per second, which you couldn't do before.
Games load faster as well.
Games will load faster. So if you don't have a 4K TV yet, I don't see that as a reason not to get the One X, because you probably will get a 4K at some point. So that's awesome that even those people get benefit. But obviously, if you have, say, a 55 or 65 inch 4K OLED TV with low input lag and looks really nice, you're going to really get the most out of the One X. And that's nice too, because there's some future proofing there, right? This thing is very forward looking. It seems to be a very powerful console. And I have to admit, man, playing Killer Instinct on this thing, I love Killer Instinct. I think it's just a fun game. I don't take it seriously, but I love just going in there and just mashing buttons, which is what you saw in the video review. People were like, they thought I was like,
the world's fakest button mashing.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I was playing Killer Instinct. Like, that's how you play that game. As far as I know, you mash buttons really quickly and you beat people. So that's what that was. I wasn't playing like, I don't know, Destiny or something. But yeah, I don't know. I like the One X, and I think for $499, I think it's a good price.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, considering it's 4K gaming and what it does and how well it does it, I think that price tag is absolutely amazing. So
yeah, and quickly going back to the 4K TV thing, I have a 4K TV. It's not a great 4K TV. I paid maybe £500 for it, which is incredibly cheap compared to what Dan paid for his, which in the UK retails for around £1,800. That's way more than what I paid for mine. Mine's a budget 4K TV, but it's not a bad TV. When you're looking at it straight on, it's okay, and it does 4K. It's got HDR10 support. It looks really nice. The blacks, like the dark colors, could be darker, but that's something that I can live with. And I got this specifically for the One X. When the One X was announced, I bought this telly, and also got the One S at the same time, because the One S supports 4K movies and whatever else, 4K apps. And they look really great on this. So games will also look good even on budget 4K TVs. You don't have to be aiming for the OLEDs, the super expensive ones. If you don't have the budget for that, then just get something cheaper. But if you definitely want to experience 4K, even getting a cheaper 4K TV will see improvements over 1080p.
Yeah, and I try to, I heard that and read that unless the TV is 65 inches, you don't really get to appreciate 4K as much. And there's some truth to that. I think 55 is okay. It depends, of course, how close you sit to it. This doesn't work with PC monitors, by the way, because PC monitors you sit very close to. So you can have a smaller 4K or, of course, a laptop where you're very close to it. But with a TV and you're across the room, so what I'm trying to say is, and like, we'll be doing more on this stuff about, TVs. Like I said on the Ask Dan, I bring this up about what you should look for. Try to go bigger. If you can get OLED, try to go OLED.
Yes,
I know
definitely
it's
try to
expensive.
go OLED. I'm looking to get an OLED very soon. I'm probably going to get the same as Dan or the B7, which apparently are identical.
Yeah, right. Yeah, people are asking, and Jen from Microsoft is saying, yeah, it's the LG C7 is what I have, 55. And there's apparently a B7 in UK. So
the problem I have with 4K TVs right now is that usually the 55 inch is far more approachable price wise than the 65. So the 55 C7 in the UK is £1,800. The 65 inch, which is 10 inches bigger, is £2,800. That's £1,000 more for 10 inches.
Yeah.
That's so expensive.
Yep. And the funny thing is that's cheap compared to where those were 2 years ago.
Right.
OLED
No,
were
these
just
were
prohibitively
4,000
expensive.
like minimum.
Yeah.
They've gone down a lot, but they're still very expensive.
Yep. But they what I don't recommend, if you can't afford OLED, don't go look at an OLED.
Right.
just I go, by the way, if you really want a good site for TVs, I'm going to plug a site that we're not affiliated with here, ratings, RTINGS.com. They do some of the most comprehensive testing I've ever seen on TVs, and go there and you can read their reviews, what they recommend for different sizes, if you want 4K or if you want OLED. But they do their tests are very consistent. They make their own tests and they look at things like motion blur, which for gaming is super important, input lag as well. So go check them out. We'll be covering some stuff too going forward. But so I brought up mixed reality or the lack thereof on the One X, and I agree. Now, this is a complicated topic because you can't at one hand say Windows mixed reality is this huge thing that everybody wants, and how dare they then put it on the One X versus, wait, no, this is still niche, it's still growing. Why didn't they put it on the One X? So, with the Windows 10 PC, putting on the headset, I'm not going to lie, it's easier to plug in the HDMI and USB. It's cool, it's simple, but you're still tethered. It's still not ideal. And when you're in your living room or whatever wearing this thing and shooting around stuff, part of you in your head wishes there was no wire. I think in a living room setup it's even more because most people want to keep their living room pretty tidy. No one likes the idea of like wired controllers like when you're a kid just laying on the floor. I think it's the same with headsets too. And Microsoft has implied at least that they want this to be a wireless experience. Now part of me wishes that mixed reality was part of this. Obviously, the power of the One X would be amazing. I don't think what's cool about the One X, I think there's a lot more stuff coming for it. I think they're going to turn on features through the hardware and support for things later on. So I think there's a lot of growth there. So I don't think that's the end of the story, but if you wanted mixed reality or virtual reality right now for the One X, it's not there. I'm not convinced that, like virtual reality on a PlayStation 4 is a huge thing either. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there.
So now the One X is pretty much out. How long before Sony makes the most powerful console? Because that's what this game is now. This game is Microsoft and Sony making incremental updates to their existing platform, saying, "Oh, now ours is the more powerful one. Oh, now ours is the more powerful one."
Yeah, there is that.
Luckily, with Sony, and then it was the One X, and I assume Sony will go next. I don't think Nintendo's going to turn up with a Switch 4K.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I will say the engineering that's in the Xbox One X is, like I said, it's impressive. I don't think what makes the One X interesting, it's not like they took off-the-shelf parts and just put it into a box, which some of us, I think, were thinking maybe what's going on. There's a lot of custom stuff and proprietary technology they put in there, and it's very reminiscent of Surfaces, just how well built they are. We've talked about the thermals on the recent Surface devices. Like Surface laptop has a fan. You wouldn't really know there's a fan there unless you're doing a Windows update and you put your ear by the hinge. You do not hear this fan, and they're saying the same thing with Surface Book 2. They seem to have really just taken their A team and go, all right, let's just work on thermals. And so I feel like what they've done in the One X is going to be very hard for any company to replicate. Not that Sony couldn't do it, but I don't think it's going to be super easy either.
Yeah.
So, but I think the story of the One X will be finished or more written in 2018. I think right now you can get it. You're going to love it. There's a lot of your older games will look better on it. A lot of newer games are coming out will leverage it. But I think there's way more to come next year. And so I think you still have time. I would wait to the holiday season with 4K TVs coming down in price, of course, before you jump on it. I would start eyeballing what you want now. But, people got time with this stuff. If you're coming from a 1S, you definitely get improvements in gaming. You don't get really improvements, I would say, for Netflix or Amazon or even your Blu-ray player, right? Those are going to be very similar experiences. So I know some people, and I'm part of this crowd, you have an Xbox because you use it mostly for media, but you like to game on it. The shift there is not quite as dramatic. So, but it's $150 difference. So if you can sell your 1S and, make up the cost, I still think once you start playing games at 4K, I'll be honest, and it was funny because I did all this video footage for Jess and he didn't use it. I did Gears of War 4 4K on Xbox One X, and then I did it on the 1S on a full HD TV and recorded those. And I was just like, whoa, when I looked at the full HD version with the 1S. I was like, oh God, it's disgusting. It's a big difference. And it's just it did not look good at all. So, but
yeah, I'm very excited for my 1X order. Mine shipped today, so it should be here by Tuesday. I got the Project Scorpio edition. I think you've got the Scorpio edition on order as well.
Yes. Actually, I haven't checked to see if my emails have come in, if it's shipped.
Are you going to do a comparison between the standard and the Scorpio? You should do, because I feel like we need to see that.
yes.
We definitely.
Yeah,
need to
we'll
see
be
that.
doing. Yeah.
Oh, do we know if the Scorpio edition comes with a special controller, or is it still just a boring?
Yeah. It says Project Scorpio on it. It doesn't say day one, but yeah, it says Project Scorpio. But it's basically the same controller. And it's the same. If you have an Elite controller, you'll just throw it into a pile and you'll use your Elite controller. So
I've been holding out for a new Elite controller. It's got to be soon, right? We need one. Now we've got Scorpio. So. We have to have a new, because basically what I want, a lot of people ask, I did tweet about this the other day, and a lot of people said, what would you want in a version 2? Bluetooth, better built, because the first gen Elite controllers are very flimsy. They do break quite easily. And there was something else that I can't remember. I mentioned something else, but yeah, there are improvements that can be done to the Elite controller, and they should be done sooner rather than later.
It is surprising they don't have Bluetooth. That's a little bit weird, but
yeah. Oh, and also Designer Lab support. I would love to build my own custom Elite controller. That'd be amazing.
I agree there.
So moving on to our next story, the Elite X3. This is back in the news.
So this is a funny story. We've been hearing about this for a while. There's been FCC reports, and when I tried to dig on this with HP. It was funny. I was just,
HP had no idea.
HP had no idea. I mean, they knew they had a Verizon compatible version, but they couldn't tell me anything about distribution / availability, which goes to tell you how low in the totem pole this stuff has become for them. My impression is they were working hard to get this done, and they didn't do it initially, not because they didn't want to. HP was always like, yes, we want it on Verizon. But the story behind that, and Peter Bright from Ars Technica has said this before, that Microsoft overfired their teams and they lost a lot of CDMA support. And when it came to Windows 10 Mobile, there was really not much Windows CDMA support. Now, we talked about this before, where if you were upgrading an 8.1 device to Windows 10 Mobile, it would carry over the drivers and things would work. But there were no, as far as I know, Windows 10 Mobile only devices that were sold with CDMA.
Right.
And this goes back to that. So HP wanted CDMA support and they couldn't do it, and we're waiting on Microsoft. And I think the bits finally came through. HP paid Verizon to get the thing certified because, as everybody correctly pointed out, if you want to make this a business phone in the United States, you really need to be on Verizon. This is one of the biggest business carriers out there. And HP knew that, but they had to wait on Microsoft. And so as soon as they got it approved, which was probably like a 5-month process. And then Microsoft was like, all right, Windows 10 Mobile is not our focus anymore. So I think what you're seeing now is basically leftover stock. It was probably an order committed, and they probably maybe even had some that a company was going to use, and then they backed out. And so I think they have stock. I'm surprised most Microsoft stores have them. You can go pick it up right at the Microsoft store, which is awesome. I'm not trying to dissuade people. Listen, I like the Elite X3. It's a pretty awesome phone. It has a great fingerprint reader compared to the Alcatel. It's a cool phone. Like, and if you're just decided you're sticking with Windows 10 Mobile, here's your chance. Go get it. I can't promise you it's going to be there in 2 months. I think I was told that once stock dries up, that's it. Like, they're not going to make these things anymore.
They're not making any. They're not in production. So once they do go, they're gone. They're gone for good. Like the Lumia 950. If you can't buy a Lumia 950 anywhere now because they don't make them anymore. So the Elite X3 will suffer the same fate.
And it's not being sold in Verizon stores. I want to make that clear. This isn't like some deal with Verizon. Verizon basically, it's approved for their network. And so Microsoft is selling it. And so you can't walk into a Verizon store, I don't think. I think you could there may be a Verizon business channels, but you need a special account usually for that. You may be able to get there. But and someone points out the camera is the weakest link. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Elite X3's camera is like, it works. I mean, it's not terrible. In daylight, it actually looks really nice. But yeah, low light imaging, which our audience for Lumia users is usually like the threshold, it's not amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the Elite X3 is still the Windows Phone super phone that we were calling it back when it was first announced. It's still the most powerful one. Nothing beats it in the Windows Phone space outside of the camera area, of course. The story of the Elite X3 is kind of interesting because for a lot of it, it was HP waiting on Microsoft to add software features and functions. So if you remember back when it was announced, they were like, yeah, we want to have a fingerprint reader on it, but we're waiting on Microsoft for that. We want to do all sorts of like the lock screen, but we're waiting on Microsoft for that. A lot of the things HP wanted to do with this phone was tied back by Microsoft being lazy or just not committing to the platform as much as they
I wouldn't say lazy, but yeah, it was not a priority for them. They did, when I talked to HP, they were very happy to be working with Microsoft. This was not like a begrudging relationship.
I don't know why.
Well, I think they see a lot of opportunity here to create different stuff, but I mean, obviously this didn't work out. But
maybe their idea is that they were going to be, let's just pretend to like Windows 10 Mobile. So when they do come out with their next thing, we can be first in line. Like, hey, we supported you on your other thing. Give us a chance with this one.
They did invest a lot of money into obviously making Elite X3. I mean, and I still give them so much credit because for a company that hadn't made a phone in a very long time to come out the gate with that thing, like, I mean, and by the way, I don't have it here. Speaking of HP, I got 2 new HP laptops, which I'll be reviewing. I'm super busy this month, unfortunately. I was literally sent, like, I think 5 laptops this week. I know, poor Dan. But I do have to review those. That's a lot of work. I have the HP Spectre 13. If you go on my Instagram, Daniel _Rubino on Instagram, you can see it there. And oh my God, it's so gorgeous. It is just the nicest device. And I have the new X360 13, which has the quad-core 8th generation Intel chip in there. And they've also made some nice improvements there too. Both of these are just really cool. But that Spectre is just, man, it comes in the ceramic white. And it's just such a cool device.
It's so beautiful.
It's so stupidly thin. It really looks like a laptop that in a movie, when they show you a laptop in the future, like that's what I would imagine it to be. It's pretty ridiculous. So we'll be doing more coverage of that in the coming weeks. I'll be comparing it to, I also have the new Dell XPS 13 with 8th generation, which is a beast. Just quick thing there. This thing is running a Core i7 with I think 8 gigs of RAM. It truly gets 10 hours of battery life now with the QHD display. Not the full HD, the full QHD touch display. This thing is rocking full 10 hours of usage, which to me boggles my mind, like that we're at that stage now. 10 hours is like that, like, oh, I can leave this charge at home and use this thing and not worry about it, right? No battery saver. This 8th generation Intel processor is pretty cool. I realize it's not the true generation jump. Still 14 nanometer, but those extra cores so you're getting more performance, only for multi-core, of course. I mean, it improves on single core use, but you'll see in the benchmarks, it basically doubles the multi-core, but you're also getting better battery life. That's like 2 things that usually don't go hand in hand. So it's like, if you have a choice to buy 7th generation or 8th generation Intel right now, go for the 8th gen. It's pretty stupendous.
Speaking of 7th gen, I think it is, Surface Pro with LTE.
Yes.
It's the seventh gen, right? Yeah. So Microsoft was in London this week for Future Decoded Panos Panay on stage and announced what we was all expecting: the Surface Pro LTE availability. It's coming December 1st for business customers. What does that mean? Well, it means you and I can't buy it in December. That's pretty much what it means. It means it's only going to be available in business channels up until early next year, when it will slowly roll out to retail spaces, which means you can go and buy it in the Microsoft Store. So that shouldn't be happening until spring 2018, early spring. It's unfortunate, but at least it's coming. We've known it's been coming since May. Microsoft did technically officially announce it back in May, along with the Surface Pro announcement itself. LTE is a nice addition, and if you tuned into Panos Panay's presentation this week, it was all about being mobile, which is interesting considering Microsoft's stance on mobile itself these days. So Panos, a lot of us, well, what I personally think he was sort of, maybe not hinting, but laying the story out for this upcoming Andromeda device in the future. Maybe not directly, but it definitely plays into the idea of everybody's mobile. He talks about getting up in the morning, checking the text, checking his Twitter, going to work, doing things whilst he's going to work. It's all about being productive on the go. And LTE is one of the key factors in enabling people to be productive on the go. So the Surface Pro supporting LTE is a big step forward for Microsoft. The last Surface to support LTE, I believe, was the Surface 3, right? And I think the Surface 2 RT also did LTE. There was an LTE SKU for it. So this isn't a new thing for Microsoft, but they have put it back to the Surface Pro line, and this is the most powerful Surface Pro, or the Surface device yet to support LTE, which is great. And it really does enable people to be productive on the go. I mean, I do believe it's Microsoft's goal to have LTE by default in all of its devices at some point in the future. That should be the goal for every company. We are moving into a world that's far more mobile than it ever has been. LTE and devices should at some point become standard. It should no longer be a special SKU that costs $200 more, for example, which I think is what Apple does and Microsoft is still doing. At some point in the future, it will just be, here's the Surface Pro or here's the Surface laptop. It has LTE in it because it does, just like a phone does. You don't buy a phone without LTE and with LTE. It's just they all come with cellular connections. So
yeah, it's actually a really interesting discussion. A lot of people bring this up, like, why don't they just put LTE and stuff? And HP and Lenovo have experimented with this in the past. And from my understanding is the consumer market, just people, the problem is when you buy an LTE device, now you have to go to AT&T or your carrier, open up a second line, data only, get a SIM, put it in there and all that. And it's just not something that a lot of consumers feel the need to do. And I get a lot of people in our audience, like, yeah, of course I want to use that. But with that extra cost and all that stuff, I can see how a lot of people, FedEx is here with more laptops. I can totally get, what people want that, but they don't sell a ton. Now, eSIM stuff changes a little bit because that takes the pain points out. If you think about it, you don't need to put a physical card in there. Pretty soon you'll be able to just go to your Windows Store and be like, activate this, just give me 4 gigs of data, here, pay, and then it turns on, right? So that's where I think your argument comes in, where in the future we'll start to see more of these devices. There's still the part of them including the modem and the antenna and the device build itself that's not inconsequential. I believe the Surface Pro LTE is about $150 more than its equal version without LTE. So someone's got to pay for that antenna and eSIM hardware on board, and that's where it's going to come strange. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, so yeah, the comment regarding the Surface Pro LTE coming in December to business only was direct from Panos. I actually asked Panos about this, whether it be available to normal people to buy in December. Unfortunately not. That's unfortunate. I personally would like to. I don't own any LTE based laptops, I don't think.
I wasn't kidding. I really got more stuff in.
More laptops, awesome. See, Dan's living the life. Dan does all of this for you guys, I hope you realise.
What was that?
Dan does all of this for you guys, I said.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think I actually got the Dell Visor controllers in because I shipped them separately for some reason. So I think that's what showed up as well as
It's also funny. I was talking about we did a Q&A session with Panos this week at the Future Decoded thing, and somebody asked the age-old mobile question, and he was like, "We have nothing to announce," but I mean, it's not a surprise to hear that they're always looking to the future. They're looking at areas where devices matter and will matter in the future. So although Microsoft aren't announcing anything and haven't announced anything, we have heard the Andromeda rumors. It's pretty safe to say that they are at least looking at building some kind of mobile device of the future. And again, this ties back to Panos' speech on stage, where he was talking about being mobile, how big mobile is important, how Microsoft needs to be there and help people be mobile with LTE and stuff like that. This is a market that they aren't leaving. They're definitely doing things in this market, and hopefully next year we should see that more flourish. I mean, they also talked about pen and how pen is important for lots of people. Again, not everybody uses pen. I personally don't, but there are people out there who do, and Microsoft says that they love pen use. They focus on pen use a lot. Pen use, touch use, keyboard and mouse, it's all just as important. But they love pen use, and again, emphasis on pen and this Andromeda device. I think they're connected.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to pen on a smaller device. I still don't use it a lot on Surface stuff. But it's just my workflow. I'm mostly typing and creating stuff. I'm not really drawing and doing that. But I wouldn't mind a portable device I could take notes, and I'd be curious if I use that. It's got to be better than finger typing. I still do not like finger typing. I liked it on Windows Phone. I got used to it there. I still don't care for it on Android or iOS. It still drives me nuts.
See, real quick, going back to the Q&A with Panos, we were talking about the kind of devices Microsoft wants to build, and he basically said people need the best tools they can possibly have. Microsoft will continue to innovate in those areas. So again, going back to the idea of Surface as a tool, he mentions this on stage as well. If you go back and listen to the keynote, Surface isn't just a product for consumers. It's a product for businesses and enterprise and people, frontline workers. That was the phrase he used, frontline workers, people who need these devices to do actual work. These are tools to many people. They may be premium expensive tools, but they're still tools nonetheless. And this Andromeda device, interestingly, isn't a device that I can see normal consumers being interested in. And that may be on purpose. In fact, it is on purpose. I believe it is on purpose. This device isn't going to be a thing that iPhone users want to buy. It's going to be a tool for people who need it, and that's an important factor to point out.
Yeah, and it plays along with the Windows 10s stuff, which we saw earlier at Ignite, where now there's a push to get those low-cost devices for frontline workers that are easily managed. They can't screw them up and install external software and get viruses that don't cost a lot of money. It's sort of like the Chromebook play, but for Microsoft or Windows 10. And that's where Windows 10s plays into it. You can do it with Surface as well. So, some definitely interesting stuff going on. Obviously, the enterprise market is very huge. It always has, not always, but I would say a lot of times technology starts off in enterprise. It's super expensive. It's kind of niche, and then it trickles down to the consumer market. BlackBerry is, I think, the classic example of that. Same with Trios, which were always business, and then they became sort of more mainstream. And so yeah, I don't know. We'll see with the Surface Pro stuff. I agree. I would like to see Surface Book 2 with LTE, but I don't think a lot of people are still on board with that. I don't think consumers are. I think
I don't think that the cost for putting it into a normal device warrants the amount of use it would get from the majority of buyers. Because I know I personally, on a laptop at least, wouldn't use it.
And HP and Lenovo, like if you look at like HP's Elite books, almost always offer a modem option for LTE, and Lenovo does the same thing for a lot of their devices. But when it comes to your consumer line, sometimes you see it as an option, but most often, I just don't think these things really sell a ton. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think that does it, right? Is that all we have for this week?
That's everything.
Sounds good to me. All right, let's go to Q&A, and we'll do that. Now, remember, guys, we do record this every Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go watch it at mixer.com/Windows Central.
Don't the clocks go backwards there on Sunday? Or is it?
What does that have to do with anything? We're still going to record at 2:30.
Oh, wait. Oh, okay. Sorry. See, it changed for me. I had to do an hour early today because the clocks went back for me. I don't know if it was the same for you guys.
Anyway, so you can go to mixer.com/Windows Central, and you can watch the rebroadcast of this at any time. Otherwise, you can join us sometimes on Thursdays. But we still haven't returned Microsoft Gaming and Libations, MGL. We're just super busy with the One X stuff. But
I think it's back next week. I think we're going to reboot it next week with One X's. We're going to have a One X. So.
I probably won't be there. I'll probably be in New York City again, so I have some more trips to take. but we'll see.
Can you just say no? Just say no to them next time. Sorry, no.
But anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll take your questions now. Take care, everybody.